And now we moved to item 8. We have Chris Thurston, the Head of Sustainability at Watercare, and he is going to give an update. And we've got a presentation as well. We'll just let Chris go completely through his presentation, and then we'll head to questions after that. Thank you, members. Kia ora, Chris.
Kia ora koutou. Kia ora everyone, thank you so much for the invitation to join you today to give an update on some of the work that Watercare has been doing in the sustainability space, and that includes in particular a range of climate change action work. I wanted to just really quickly frame a little bit of Watercare's approach to sustainability. I guess I'm privileged to have the title and role of Head of Sustainability at Watercare, and I've been in the role for just coming up to 3 years now. But there's a bit of a structure that we use to help consider the sustainability approach within the organisation, and it comes from a bit of a tiered approach, I guess. From a global perspective, we think of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. In particular, SDG 6 is around clean water and sanitation, so that's one that inherently links with the work that Watercare does. But there's a number of others on there, and I try not to pick favourites, but number 13 of climate action is personally my favourite. But we think about a number of these when we think about the work that we do as an organisation and the role that we have to contribute towards a better world, which is what the United Nations are attempting to achieve. In the top right corner of the slide, you'll see fully sustainable. That's one of the 4 strategic objectives of the organisation, and that guides us in the work that we do and the decisions that we make. It guides us in the way that we look at the organisation, and it guides us as individuals. There's 3 key component parts underneath that. One is to protect and enhance the natural environment. The other is to be a responsible corporate organisation, and finally to meet our legal obligations. So within that, it has both a regulatory component, but also that protect and enhance the natural environment, and those parts drive our organisation. The bottom right of that slide is a representation of the 6 capitals of integrated thinking. Watercare uses the 6 capitals, natural capital in the top left through to financial capital in the bottom right, but also including stakeholder and community, people and culture, assets, and also intellectual capital, to think about how we create value. And the capitals, if you're not too familiar with them in this context, is about a stock. And you can have a stock of money, which is financial capital, which can be increased or decreased, but we also think about the stocks that we have across each of these capitals. These are used in things like our annual report to discuss how we talk about value. They're used within our board papers when we think about making a decision. Do we have an integrated lens across all of these considerations? And they're also used as another lens for us as individuals in the company. But in the bottom left, I guess I just wanted to really mention that for us, being a water organisation and being intrinsically linked to the natural environment, we're guardians, and we're privileged to be part of working with water every single day. And by working with water, we work with the land, we work with the people, the birds, the animals, and absolutely everything. And that sort of intrinsic link is something that guides and frames some of the work that we do. From a structural perspective, there's a couple other points to make. The sustainability team is small. It's me and one other, plus someone that works on the Central Interceptor project specifically. But when I do the part of the Watercare induction for new staff, I welcome them to the sustainability team. And I say, welcome to Watercare and welcome to sustainability. It might not say it in your job title yet, but unofficially it does. And you have the opportunity to make a difference in every single role that you have, whether it's a customer care representative or if it's someone who is working on our faults, whether that's nice clean drinking water or dealing with sewage. You have a role to play in helping Auckland and helping sustainability. John Lamont passes on his apologies to join us today, but he has only been in the role for coming up to 5 months, but is, I'm pleased to say he's a champion of the work that I've had with him so far. And Steve Webster, our Chief Infrastructure Officer, is the sponsor for climate change activities on our executive. So that sort of is a structure of how it works within our organisation. For today, I'm going to give an overview of our key focus areas. I think we only have 20 minutes on the agenda, so I was given 10 originally and asked for a bit more because I thought it was going to be impossible to get through the work that we are doing, and I still think this will be a bit of a rushed presentation. So if there is more information that you'd like, I do welcome those questions, and I can come back to you with more information. I'll finish off with a couple of challenges and opportunities. These things could be the same, and it just shows a little bit of the direction that we're trying to take the organisation. So preparing for climate change. We know that climate change impacts are real, and we know that they are facing us every single day. Water care and water will see the effects of climate change first. And we started our climate change journey in 2017 when it hit us right in the face with the Tasman tempest. And that was an extreme weather event with 3 months of rain within 2 days, and we know that it impacted our ability to process water and service Aucklanders. And that was a wake-up call for us to think about this happening more frequently in the future. We're all familiar with the water supply challenges and the drought that we've had within the last 18 months, and we know that these are going to be becoming more frequent. So Watercare has seen it over the last 4 years, and it's not something that is our future, it's something that we're seeing today. Watercare created a climate change strategy in 2019, and I've presented this strategy to this group before. I think it was about 2 years ago, 18 months ago perhaps. And it has a focus on understanding the impacts of climate change today and the variabilities that we are seeing so that we can plan for more of them into the future. This sky to sea diagram highlights the role that Watercare has from the dams and the hanuas or wherever our water source is, through a treatment plant, a series of pipes to our customers, to our people of Auckland, whether that's residential or commercial, then flush the toilet and it goes down another series of pipes to treatment plants and ends up in our natural environment and then creates a natural cycle again. And within the sky to sea, we know that climate change will have an impact on us. And that is more severe weather events, it is droughts, it is increased temperature, which will lead to increased demand of water in the future. We know that a number of our assets and the assets of our communities are near the sea. So within our climate change strategy, we have 14 portfolios, we call them. It's a breakup of how we focus our work. 9 of those are focused on the adaptation side of our work, and 5 of them are focused on mitigation. I'll be diving into a little bit more detail on each of those shortly. On the adaptation side, one of the key components we recognise is that there is uncertainty. And the IPCC brought out their report in the last couple of days to reduce some of that uncertainty about the impacts that we're going to face, but the uncertainty is very much still there. And with uncertainty, especially over an extended period of time, comes some challenges, because we're making decisions today that we have to think about the environment, the climate that they're going to be facing over that 100 years. So we've been using an approach called the Dynamic Adaptive Pathways Planning approach, DAP. It's a theoretical approach that we've been putting into practice, and I guess we're pleased to see, and we've been working with the likes of Judy Lawrence, who's a practitioner in this and is also on the Climate Commission, around the actual use of something like these pathways. And this is a really high-level representation, but it's sort of that metro map approach where you have trigger points along the bottom. And the trigger points might be population growth, but it also might be a climate change impact. It might be sea level rise along the bottom. And what we've got here, and it's impossible to read, but the point is that we've got a water treatment option at the top and a wastewater treatment option at the bottom. And we're going along pathways where we can make a decision where we might not be able to go any further if we go down that path, if we act one way. But we want to keep our pathways as open as possible so that we can keep them available for new ways of doing things. And that might mean a relocation of an asset. It might be the way we upgrade an asset. It might be looking at a consent for a treatment plant. Do we need to keep that treatment plant into the future? And all of these options, having all of these options on the table, allow us to consider what might be the best possible approach, and with the intent, and this becomes the challenge, the intent not to lock us into one pathway, which would not enable us to achieve any of the others, depending on how those trigger points occur. Like I said, this has been a theoretical practice that has been studied, and we're putting it into reality with a number of our planning approaches. That might be for one specific asset. We're doing a bit of work with Helensville at the moment, and the future approaches for that part of Auckland, but it also might be, and the treatment plant associated with that, or it might be a whole region, and it might be looking at the Whangaproa Peninsula and the northern environment to see where would we put water and wastewater services into the future, knowing that population will change, sea level rise will occur, and we'll have other impacts as well. So this is a tool that we are exploring, and it's having quite a lot of success for us to enable us to open up our options into the future. Quickly on the adaptation side, I was asked not to talk too much about drought. I'm sure there's plenty of other opportunities for that discussion, but just a really quick point to say that the investment that's been made over the last 12 months and the progress on the diversified supply is one of the biggest key components of our climate change work to look at supply of water into the future for Aucklanders. On the reducing emissions side, the climate change strategy establishes 3 key targets for us. As I mentioned, it was originally created in 2019, and we've been working on the creation and implementation of Te Tariki a Tāwhiri, and with that has been a reflection of our own strategy. So when we started in 2019, our reduction target was a 45% reduction in operational emissions by 2030. The work that the city has done in the alignment with C40 has said 50% as the target, and Watercare has embraced that challenge to add a bit more onto ours that we can look to achieve that in line with the rest of the council group and the city. I jumped past the net zero emissions by 2050, but that is also the key target for us in thinking about our future, especially as we add new infrastructure to think about the world that infrastructure will play in over the next 100 years. Finally, we have a reduction target around our construction. So Watercare, as you're aware of, will be building a number of assets in the future, and we're looking at how we can ensure that those are built with climate change and carbon reduction in mind. I'm really excited to tell you a little bit more about that in a second. We've got a couple of great opportunities. Our wastewater treatment plants collect sewage, and through that we get methane. Through methane we're able to generate electricity, and we're aiming for our treatment plants to be energy neutral. They're currently sitting, this is at our 2 major plants at Mangere and at Rosedale, they're currently sitting in the 50 to 60% range of energy neutrality. So they're almost, they're more than half of their energy comes from a self-sufficient source, and over to 2030 we're aiming for those to be 100% energy neutral. That comes from 1, being as efficient as we possibly can at the sites, 2, maximising that biogas that we have, using additional methods to create more biogas, and finally looking at additional use of land in that area, and you'll be familiar with the Rosedale floating solar array, which supports that energy neutrality as well. The team at the moment is working on this decarbonisation roadmap for these targets, and it's not one that I have the update for you or the answer for you on today. But what we have done is created value streams in each of our key areas. So in wastewater, how are we going to deliver low carbon wastewater? Within water supply, how are we going to deliver low carbon water supply? On top of that, in our infrastructure, how will we deliver that to a low carbon way? And the wraparounds are low carbon finance, low carbon supply chain, low carbon fleet. So the wraparounds are there to support us. This team has been established at a senior executive level, a senior management level within the organisation, and the intention is for them to create the roadmap to 2030 and to pass that to 2050 to achieve our targets. In the shorter term, our statement of intent requires us to establish a climate change performance measures on reducing our emissions in the shorter term. So for the next SOI, you will see annual climate or carbon targets, greenhouse gas emission targets over the next 3 years. This is a real challenge for us as we're looking at balancing water security for Auckland, the increased emissions associated with those water sources, as well as a growing population, and then the targets that we have. So the balance is between meeting all 3. Really quickly, the Rosedale floating solar array was launched in November last year, and this has been something that has been a fantastic opportunity for us. It was something that was new to New Zealand. No one had done a floating array. We'd seen the opportunity that there was this piece of real estate that wasn't being used, that we thought we could turn into something that was very positive for the organisation, and we had great partners from Vector PowerSmart who were keen on the project as well and supported us. The project supports about 20% of the Rosedale wastewater treatment plant there, and it takes up only 3% of the surface of that treatment pond. It's a bit of a test for us, and it's one that we think that we can do more of in the future. It's been performing at the expected output. So we've had it in since November, and it's done what it said it would do. So we're really pleased that the pilot has been successful to date. And this is just one. We believe that there is opportunity for Watercare in particular because of latent land that we have, especially around wastewater treatment plants. There's a lot of land that might be required for odour buffer or for some other use that can't be developed, and we think that opportunities like solar PV is something that could be pretty beneficial for us. On top of that, it provides us with a stable price path for electricity, which achieves our objectives also for the community. The second part of reducing emissions for us is around our infrastructure. Capital carbon or infrastructure carbon is the emissions associated with delivering new treatment plants, new piping projects so that we can support Aucklanders. This infrastructure carbon comes from the materials that you use. The carbon and steel is a pretty common type of material for water infrastructure, and it's highly carbon intensive. It comes from the transportation of those products to our sites, and it also comes from the construction effort, whether we're digging a tunnel or digging a trench or using a digger. All of that has emissions associated with it. When we were reviewing our infrastructure approach, we realised we could build better infrastructure. And this is a vision that's come out into the organisation that has three key components. And this is the vision that you see in front of you today that we term 40-20-20. Someone asked me, why doesn't it add up to 100? And I say it's about the vision for the future that we have. So 40-20-20 is around reducing our infrastructure carbon by 40%, reducing the cost to deliver that infrastructure by 20%, and also improving the health, safety and wellbeing outcomes every single year by 20%. The beauty of this for me is that it's not one or the other, it's absolutely all three. Some people might say that reducing carbon will cost more, and we're absolutely here to challenge them with that. One of the best things that you can do is decide whether you need to build this infrastructure at all. And if you can find an opportunity to not build the infrastructure, whether that's through an operational outcome or some other operational outcome, then you have the opportunity to reduce the carbon by 100%, maybe 90-something. You're obviously going to reduce the cost, and you reduce the opportunity for any harm to occur on that construction site. So the bringing these three together has been the way that we are looking at building better infrastructure. And this has now become a mantra for our team. So our infrastructure team, who have previously been rewarded for building and planning infrastructure, has now been given the challenge to say, can you build nothing at all? And if you can't build nothing at all because we need it, can you build and achieve that exact same outcome with less infrastructure? Can it be achieved in some other way? And we believe that this vision is doable. We've seen it overseas, and we've taken a lot of context from other organisations, especially water utilities, who are leading the way. And we believe that this is an opportunity that has benefit for New Zealand. The construction sector accord, private and public partnership at government level, has recognised this approach as what they call a beacon project, for ones that other organisations in New Zealand can learn from. I think the best thing for me is it creates a mindset shift for our organisation. It says for our planners and planners that sustainability is right at the core of the work that we do. And this is a target for all of our infrastructure. So it will come through in all of our work. Moving on quickly from the climate change work into another pillar, which I call thriving nature. And this is the relationship that we have with the natural environment that we do every single day. The Henua Native Regeneration Project, I've got a slide on that coming up, but there's a number of other things that Watercare does every single day to support biodiversity and to support thriving nature. We are lucky to be working beside the Manukau Harbour with the Mangere Wastewater Treatment Plant, one of the most incredible places for migratory birds in New Zealand. And the work that our team does to create bird roosts and to clear pest species along the foreshore supports these migratory birds to thrive. The team are really proud of the work that they do there, and it's something that's really important for them. We do a bunch of other biodiversity improvement projects. We recently, last year, released 100 longfin eels into one of our dams to control pest species. So some of the perch and the other types of fish in those dams that are introduced species, interestingly enough, have a water quality impact for us, but also there's a biodiversity issue there. So we trialled releasing these longfin eels into the dam, and they were pretty stoked with the food that they could get. and we were stoked with the outcomes associated with it. And that is using nature as a friend, right? That's using nature as our friend to support the outcomes that we have. There's a number of other programs like this, including others when we do have large infrastructure projects, such as the proposed take from the Waikato and also our Huia treatment plant. We understand that we do have an impact, so we look at alternative ways to ensure that we first of all minimise any impact that we have during that, and then on the flip side look at additional enhancements that we can make during for the life of that project. That is the balance of the protect and then the opportunity for enhancement. The Henua Native Forest Regeneration is up there as one of my favourite projects, but one that we should all be really proud of. This is planting 8 million native trees over 1,900 hectares in the Henua Ranges. It was originally established as an opportunity to protect our major water sources in the Henuas, but we know that it's far more than that. And we know that the move from a commercial forestry to a native forest will support the outcomes for resilience for our water supply, but we know that the biodiversity outcomes are incredible. We know on top of that we will create a forest and a park for Aucklanders to enjoy in the years to come. The progress has been really good, and just in the last couple of weeks we've trialled a New Zealand first drone dispersal, 50,000 pallets it has every few minutes, so we're looking at ways to get larger distribution, especially into some of the hard to reach areas, and this is a project that has garnered some good interest, especially with universities, about how this could be trialled in other areas around New Zealand as well. From another pillar we term circularity, and this is the concept about turning waste into value. Watercare is blessed with the waste that we receive down our pipes every single day, but it's a concept about moving away from a linear economy into one that's more circular and looking for ways that we can make value from these waste streams. Pukatutu Island rehabilitation is one of them. Yeah, around 80% of Auckland's waste goes through the Mangere, of Auckland's sewage goes through the Mangere wastewater treatment plant, and we stabilise the solids that come out of that and are using it to rebuild the Pukatutu Island into a maunga to restore it to its previous beauty that it was. Project's going to take a few years, but once it is there, once again, it will be a park that will be returned to Aucklanders. The alternative of this would be sending all of these biosolids to landfill and the emissions associated with that, as well as the filling up of Auckland's landfills, which is obviously not something that we want. We've got a native nursery that we're working on out at Mangere as well for more planting, either into the Henuas or into other areas around Auckland, and we're trialling using some of the byproducts of the wastewater treatment plant to support the growth of those, whether that's currently treated wastewater, and I believe that some of this group are familiar with a product that we are working on. Yeah, I didn't want to steal Rob's thunder because he's so passionate about this, so I won't delve into too much detail. But it's another example of circularity. It's about turning a waste product into something. And previously, as I understand, you used to be able to turn up to Mangere with your trailer and get some out the back. So now we've turned it into a little bit something a little bit more, a little bit more formalised. But it's an opportunity for Aucklanders to have that full circularity back into their gardens. Finally, the final pillar of the sustainability work for Watercare is around people, culture, and leadership. We truly do believe that water is a taonga, that water is a precious resource that we have the opportunity to interact with for a small period of time on its journey. And that is a concept that we're integrating into our work. Last year, we launched the Water for Life website, which is a way to share that with the community. Instead of just coming to a Watercare's website to pay a bill or complain about a broken pipe, we also want to share the knowledge that we have around this precious resource that we have. We created a special area for that, called the Water for Life, and that's a sort of sub-brand of ours to enable all of that information to be available whilst also servicing Aucklanders on those specific needs that they might have when they come to us. Watercare, through a great partner of ours, Eco Matters, it's an environment trust out west, I guess, that does a lot of work with Auckland Council, but specifically with Watercare. They do an in-home water audit service, and they are probably the forerunners of expertise in residential water auditing in New Zealand. The relationship with them has been going for a long time, and we do around 200 water audits every single year, where they spend up to 2 hours in someone's home, going through every single fitting, every single shower head. They look at the washing machine, and on top of that, they also think about the behaviours. So what are the behaviours that you might have as an Aucklander, and how could, in your home, and how could those be slightly changed or amends to also align with water efficiency? The integration of sustainability into our decision making is an ongoing one, and we're using the capitals to allow us to support that. And we also have a stated objective in our work, and it's one that I try and support wherever possible, around industry leadership. Whether that's in New Zealand, and that's the work that we can do to support other councils with their water work, or other water utilities, whether it's overseas, and we've had some success with that with the 40-20-20, and some of the Australians are now asking us about how we can do that. So what is the leadership position that we can provide? Within the organisation, external to the organisation, we have an environmental advisory group. This is a group of what we call trusted allies, I guess, and they have a range of expertise, and we work with them to support us on and challenge us and to question us on the work that we're doing. The group is headed up by Paul Walburn, who is a previous councillor many years ago, and has then a range of expertise on it, from academia, Mātauranga Māori, legal and regulatory, and has a geographic spread as well. And the work that some of the examples of the work that they support us on during the early days of our climate change strategy. They review it and they challenge us, and they see whether this is aligned with the community expectations that we have, and provide us with that early insight. Around the Henua forest regeneration work, they challenge us around any concept of herbicide use, and they provide recommendations around what that might look like. There's environmental scientists on the group as well. Finally, I put this up as part of leadership, and this is a project that we have in association with the Auckland Council Finance Group, is around green bonds. And we have millions of dollars of our assets that are currently put up as part of a green bond, also with our friends from Auckland Transport, and that green bond is put on the market because of the sustainability criteria that each of these assets meet. We dipped our toe and put about 50 million of assets in the first round, and we're just adding about 250 million of assets to that going forward. Three more slides. The Central Interceptor, I'm sure you've heard about it. It's a fantastic tunnel that's going to support outcomes for Auckland's beaches and for Aucklanders, reducing overflows. But as such a sort of hero or key project of us, we really wanted to push the boat out in considering sustainability in the design and the delivery of this project. So on its own, it's delivering incredible outcomes, but how we deliver it, we also had to have some consideration. So ISCA is an acronym for a certification scheme. It's called the Infrastructure Sustainability Council of Australia. I try and call it Australasia as much as I can, so that we can have it here in New Zealand. And ISCA is a very robust sustainability certification that asks us to look through a whole range, from toxicity to noise disturbance to carbon emissions to energy use to water use, etc., etc. Watercare, and the City Rail Link is another example of an organisation who's using ISCA. We currently have a leading rating for our design, and are tracking towards something similar to that for the delivery of the project. Just recently, we were pleased to partner with ECA, the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Fund, Authority, for their Low Emission Vehicle Fund, and we've received some funding to support some electrification of heavy trucks. These will be some of the largest electric vehicles in New Zealand, and we'll use them for spoil recovery. So as the TBM moves through on its journey, then a lot of spoil comes from that, and it has a very clear pathway of where it needs to go. So we're investing in these three to begin with, electric vehicles that will support us. You can see there the photo is of the battery swap. So the beauty of this is that there'll be one extra battery than you need, and that it can continue on a cycle and just have a 5-minute changeover for the battery. So there's no waiting around. Those will be here in January, fingers crossed. 2 slides. A couple of challenges that we have. One is the balance of the work that we want to do in the growing city, the work that we have in new infrastructure, but then considering where the city will be growing, the climate change impacts associated with sea level rise, where those communities will be in the future, and the environmental limits that we play with them. The balance of water security and delivering the services that we deliver every day, as well as the increasing discharge consent requirements. Each of those are more energy intensive than we have had in the past. So we have to have that balance between meeting our climate change objectives and that balance of the natural environment and our climate targets. The objective here is to decouple them, so they don't have to be a linear combination between increasing growth and increasing emissions. We need to decouple them, but that is absolutely the challenge. As more people join our city, we are required to deliver more services. For Watercare, that's about integrating that into our decision making every single day. And that's a process that we've started, and it's a process that we continue on. And that is the work for us as a leadership team of the organisation, and us, the board, and also this group, to integrate sustainability into our work. Finally, the opportunities. It's right back on there about how we integrate it into our decision making. This concept of water as a taonga, or water as a treasured resource, I believe that's one where we can support Aucklanders and support ourselves to achieve the outcomes, because it really is something that is incredible, that is limited, that has some finite components to it, and that Watercare is just on one part of the journey of looking after it. There's opportunities for more nature-based solutions. I've talked about a couple of today, but I think there's more opportunity for us to use nature as a friend to achieve the outcomes that we have. And Healthy Waters do some fantastic work in this already, and we've already started those conversations about additional collaboration with them to see what they, to see the learnings that they have for us. The last 2 are just about making smart decisions. Even though we have uncertainty, even though we're not sure exactly what the world will look like, we do need to make decisions today with the type of organisation they are. And we should make those decisions, especially on climate, with a mindset that we want to be proud of them. We want our engineers to be considering that we should be proud of the decisions that we make every single day when they're looked back on in 30 and 50 years, to make sure that they were the right ones for our organisation and for our city. So thank you so much. It's a whirlwind tour, and it's a pleasure to be here today. This is still just a snapshot, and I couldn't include everything. But for me, Watercare has an incredible opportunity, and we do some amazing work. We are linked to the natural environment every single day, and our people work for Watercare because they believe that. Our people tell us that they work for Watercare because of the role that we have in supporting Auckland, Aucklanders, and the beautiful environment that we have. So thank you so much for your time.
Kia ora. Thank you so much, Chris. And a whirlwind tour of many, but not all of the amazing things you are all doing at Watercare. And many of us, a big group of us, came to visit the Mangere treatment plant. Was it this week or? Tuesday, yeah, this week, and saw and heard many of the things you've been speaking about in action. And I think a lot of us, despite knowing what you all do, seeing it and, seeing the tremendous work all the staff and contractors are doing is pretty phenomenal. So thank you all for that. There was quite a number of questions, so we'll just head straight to them. Councillor Casey, you are first up.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, there's nothing like being there. And I was with the party on Tuesday with the Deputy Mayor that did the grand tour, and it was really exciting. And one of your biggest secrets, I think, is the redevelopment of Pukitutu Island. And I've got a couple of questions about that for you. Since I've been back, I had a few questions myself and a few questions from others about the science of it. And I think we're underselling it online. I think there's a real opportunity there to tell the story. My question, though, is when I came back, I realised it had a Maori name from local iwi, Te Motu Ahiaroa, and I don't see that in anything that Watercare does. So can we use the joint name? Is that possible? Or can we use the Maori name? Because that's also possible. So it was just that was my question. I didn't know about it till I came back and somebody asked me.
Yeah, thank you so much. I agree, it's a bit of a hidden secret out there. And though the process to start that project was pretty in-depth, and the relationship that we had to start with iwi to give us the permission to rehabilitate the island the way that we were doing was one, and included including the naming for sure. I don't have the answer for you today about the more use of the name, but I can talk with the team in our communications about it. I don't see any problem why we wouldn't. Thank you.
You also got a bag of fertiliser each.
Oh,
Good, thank you,
Well
Councillor. Deputy Chair Pipacombe.
Kia ora, Mr Chair. Morena koutou, tēnā koe. Chris, thank you for that really informative presentation, and I was fortunate as well to be along for the tour, which was very eye-opening and really fantastic. So it was great to be there on Tuesday and just echo what Councillor Casey said about the rehabilitation of Puketutu Island. My question is around, as part of our tour, we also got a presentation on some of the innovation that Watercare is looking at. And I can't remember exactly what it was called, but it was basically on-site wastewater, like localised wastewater systems, kind of like sewage mining almost. I think it was some reference like that. But I just wondered, it was a question that I had on Tuesday, but we ran out of time, but has that got the potential to be as disruptive as, say, distributive energy generation and what's happening there with the energy sector? Is there kind of disruption happening in water, wastewater? I mean, you did talk a lot about not having to build infrastructure, but are we getting to a position where even like big projects like the Central Interceptor were maybe conceived and developed at a time where we should be thinking about how the whole sector is going to be really disruptive, and what does that mean for the future?
thank you. The opportunities in any circularity component are pretty exciting in the water sector globally, and wastewater reuse has been an opportunity that's been identified in a number of different ways. Often, however, at a big centralised way. And the Australians and the Americans in particular have been looking at wastewater reuse for drinking, for potable consumption, and the way that they've been doing that has been at big centralised plants, big infrastructure that has its own environmental impacts, and this is that balance that we talk about. The more decentralised component, especially in wastewater, is when we look at that, I think about different cascades of water quality, and at the moment we treat almost everything to drinking water standards and then use it for absolutely everything, even if it's watering a sports field, or even if it's in the nursery, or even if it's flushing the toilet, right? We use everything to drinking water standard. So I think the potential disruption that you're alluding to is around the consideration of water in different cascades of quality and the opportunities where that could be localised. One of the projects that we're investigating at the moment is the Rosedale sports fields. Fortunately, it's sitting right next to one of our wastewater treatment plants, but there's other opportunities where you have something smaller, just like a sewer main, where you can sewer mine, like you're saying, with a smaller packaged treatment plant, and create a quality of water that I wouldn't say it's up to drinking quality standard, but can be used for something like irrigation of a sports field. The alignment with renewable energy, solar for example, there's similarities, but there's also some significant differences in the way sun shines versus water flows. So I haven't seen the pace of change that we've seen in renewable energy. But I think the ability for smaller packaged plants, the technology is improving in comparison to what we've done before. Another example of that we've worked with the North around packaged water plants, where we didn't have to build a whole new treatment plant. You could bring in a containerized system. So those things are definitely starting to occur. Not yet at the household level, like solar perhaps, but probably a couple of steps before.
Thank you. There's lots to explore there. Ngā mihi.
Good, thank you. We have 7 more members to question, so I might have to cut it off there, but we'll go to Member Wilson.
Kia ora, Chris. Thanks very much for the presentation. Nothing like some energy to get us all going, although it didn't sound like it this morning. Look, just a couple of things. The presentation where you utilise Māori reo and then not demonstrate it through the presentation is just really a bit disconcerting. I probably think if you are, you need to have an advisor. So that's just to help. So your presentation's got that complexity. So to describe water care, ko waio, you wouldn't normally do that. To describe water care as kaitiaki, I think iwi would find that quite disturbing, that you're doing that in terms of sustainability. So that I'm just giving you some pointers, I guess. We sit here as Independent Māori Stat Board and we are looking for those sorts of things. Then te tāruke, a tāwhiri, which is the climate change plan, as you're aware, be really good to see how you're linking that into, because it is the plan Auckland Council is adhering to, how you're linking that to the sustainability for water care, because I wasn't able to see that accurately. Then you talked about the combination, the figures, I can't remember the slide number unfortunately, you combine Rosedale and Mangere, and you were talking about 50% operational and 40% construction. Be really good to tease out those facilities so you can see how it impacts in terms of Mangere, which I understand percentage-wise takes most of the waste, as it combines with Rosedale. How much does that take? Because from a perspective of, I suppose, Southerners, it always takes the bulk and has done for many years. What are you going to do in this space in terms of sustainability? You use the word decouple those so we can clearly see who will have the most adverse impact. Then you did talk about decoupling, and I wasn't quite sure of what you meant about that, so I'll pose the question now and then just move on to other comments. The question I have is, you talked about something that sounded quite significant. We need to look at decoupling, balancing water security and discharge consent requirements. Wow, that seemed to be pretty concerning for me as risk. So I'll leave that there to cogitate in your head. While I move to the others, you talked about the Manukau Harbour, who most of you would consider as the most, the water quality is the worst, but you talked about the biodiversity. I think those need to be balanced up in terms of sustainability, and you're matching it across. You talked about Te Motuahiaroa, which is Puke Tutu Island. You're calling mounds of excrement maunga. I can honestly say without a shadow of a doubt, you don't call mountains of Tamaki Makaurau citizens as a maunga. It has a really distinctive significance for iwi. And in terms of describing the positive sides, yeah, there was a positive side, as we know, but that was born by a matter of litigation, so not everybody wanted that there. I think we need to keep those in perspective in terms of incorporating all the things I've said. Y8 clearly is the most significant Y claim for any iwi up here in Tāmaki Makaurau, how that contributed to the Manukau Harbour and the iwi associated with that. So those are just commentary to hopefully aid and probably bringing your advisor in as well. But I really would like to understand the decoupling scenario, please, if I can. I know it should be short and sharp because there's lots of speakers, but can you just explain that really? There seems to be a risk there that hasn't really been identified. If we could get some more information later, that would be also.
Cool. Thank you very much for the comments. Much appreciated. The decoupling comment was specifically around growth. So traditionally, we've been on a linear growth of emissions in line with our growth in population. We know that population is continuing to grow, especially in Auckland. So we need to find a way to decouple the growth in emissions from that so that the emissions can decrease whilst the population increases. I think the second point, though, was about the balancing component of water security, resource consents, and greenhouse gas emissions. That wasn't a decouple, that was a balance in our consideration of how do we ensure that we can achieve our greenhouse gas emission reduction targets, a 50% reduction in emissions, whilst we're requiring more water for the city, and the emissions associated with more water because of the lower emission sources, the dams that we've had for many years have all been used. So the question is, how do we ensure that we can achieve both outcomes and balance any of those impacts? It might mean more investment. It might mean a change in approach. It might mean something else, and that's the balancing equation that we have to have in all of our work.
Thank you. I won't hog any more time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Kia ora, Member Wilson. Thank you, Chris. Councillor Walker.
So, a few things. One of the suggestions and questions I've put to successive meetings around water care is joining up with water sensitive cities, which is an international network, South Pacific based in Melbourne. I visited them. They're certainly up for it, and it would significantly enhance our benchmarking. Are we making some progress there?
Thank you very much for the question. Yeah, the Water Sensitive Cities group has been engaged. The benchmarking is anticipated to occur in September. The dates haven't been set. Water care is a component part because it's a city benchmark, not a utility benchmark. So it's been run out of the team that's delivering the water strategy for council, and water care is engaging with that. One thing that has been recognised as the team has engaged with the benchmark is that it needs a bit of tweaking for the New Zealand context, and talks about Indigenous water concepts, but they're probably not New Zealand Indigenous water concepts. So that's the status update from my understanding, but not my lead on that one, sorry.
And just further to that, are we also engaging with Auckland University? I mean, for example, in Australia, you've got a partnership with Monash University. Usually there's some form of involvement like that. So have we had some discussions with them?
For the benchmarking specifically, or in general?
The engagement of water-sensitive cities.
Through the chair, I'll take that. So that's being led out of my area. I don't know the answer. I'm happy to come back to you, Councillor Walker.
And just the other general question, quite obviously there are various scenarios, one of which is zero emissions by 2050. Given a circumstance where our present targets are probably nowhere near adequate enough, and that reflects the recent IPCC report and other information, do we have a scenario-based planning that allows us to bring a number of solutions forward? And is the general listing around things that you're looking at available, so that, you know, we've got roadmaps across a number of areas?
Thank you. The challenge associated with the most recent IPCC report is a stark reminder of the ambition we need to have. Two questions there. First one, will we have the second one was, will we have the roadmap for you to see? Not yet there, not yet in place, but it will be part of the SOI response that we have, will be a projection of how we intend to achieve our short-term but also our long-term targets. Second question, remind me of the second question.
Second question just went to the roadmap in terms of identifying the specifics of what we could be looking at. But just going back to the roadmap, it's not available now. What's your time frame around when we're going to have that?
The time frame is aligned with the SOI. Our SOI target asks us to have that drafted by March next year to be presented into our SOI for reporting by September next year. I think your other question was around the perhaps what I would term maybe unconstrained thinking, and are we able to achieve these net zero targets if with the new information, should we be bringing them forward? One of the three principles that I've asked the decarbonisation team to consider, one is unconstrained thinking to begin with, so a bottom-up approach. The second one is how do we have bold ideas, just have that as a concept. And the third one is what would it take to get to net zero? Just at the highest level, what would it take to get to net zero? I don't have the answer for that yet, but then we can work backwards to see how we would achieve it.
The last question quickly, you mentioned Whangaproa. Both myself and Councillor Watson have an abiding interest in the Hibiscus Coast and that area generally. Would be happy to engage with you around that. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good. And yeah, just on that water sensitive cities part there, we could get Toby to update you directly. There is a lot of work going on behind the scenes because it has been noted by Mana Whenua Kaitiaki Forum and IMSB members that it is not an appropriate system to just throw into the Tamaki context without putting a bicultural Te Ao Māori lens over it. So we're working in, looking for meetings, I don't know if they've been set up yet, but to ensure that we are doing that in the correct way, because it's not appropriate just to throw an international context into the
I don't understand that, but if someone can explain that to me, there are multiple cities with Indigenous relationships that are members of water-sensitive cities. So
It's not saying we won't be involved with that, it's just not appropriate to put the exact framework without acknowledging that we are completely different and that it needs to be Māori-led, not international-led when it comes to water. So, there's a bit of work to be done. Councillor Simpson.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Geez, Chris, I could speak to you all day. That was fantastic. Well done and congratulations. Look, I'll keep it brief. There's a number of questions. Is there such a thing as the head of sustainability group between other CCOs? Do you guys meet on a regular basis? Because I believe that you led the Watercare led the 40-20-20, and I think that's a really great initiative. And I just wondered how much you share and build from each other and provide ideas. We've put it in all our CCO SOIs, and I know some of that is challenging, but you have to aim high, right? And I'm just keen if, you know, in the working group, is there such a thing as a working group, and how much you collaborate together around that?
Thank you. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be part of the council family and the incredible sustainability managers that sit across a number of the CCOs and the parent body. Regular meetings do occur. I hate to say it, since Alec Tang left, we've been a little bit in a lurch, so we've got to get that back up and running. And we were just talking about that last week. There was an email chain on it, so I don't have the next meeting in my diary, but I can assure you that that group does exist and does collaborate frequently.
Oh, fantastic. And just my last question, maybe through you or through staff beside you. I really enjoyed, like the others, the visit through the Mangere wastewater treatment processing plant, and the use of light and the other way, you know, sustainably, actually what you are doing out there. I wouldn't mind going to see Rosedale. I think that the new pilot program you've got there with that solar panels that sit on 3% of the pond doing 20% of the work, I think that's a great initiative, and I think that's something we would all benefit from having a look at and understanding how that works. So thank you.
Kia ora, thank you, Councillor. And yes, there, to Chris's point around Alec and Matthew and team are doing an amazing job, but where they are half the size they were a year ago with about 10 times the amount of things to be doing. So they're recruiting at the moment, but it's pretty tough to cover over everything we're doing, but also all the government submissions and things that are coming in. Mayor Goff.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chris, for your presentation, which was really good. When the drought first struck in 2019, Watercare acknowledged to us that they hadn't incorporated climate change into their long-term water availability modelling. I'm just wondering, are you doing that now, and how are you doing it? And if so, what does it show?
Thank you, Mayor Goff. There is a tool that we use, IECCM, the Integrated Source Management Tool. And the tool has been going through some updates recently. And the first update is make sure we've got the most recent information in it. So the last 20 years are as up to date as possible. And the next step, which has just started recently, is to ensure that we have the projections into the future. Now, that is the complex tool that we use every single day. That doesn't mean that because it's not in that tool, we don't take into account those considerations. And in the 14 portfolios, water source or water availability is one of them specifically on its own standalone, so an important area for us to focus on.
So, sorry, just to clarify that, have you now built climate change into that model? Because you hadn't 2 years ago, but you were hopefully intending to.
Yeah.
So I understand you've got this integrated source management tool, but I still wasn't clear whether climate change was an integral part of that.
In the tool itself, it's not, the model doesn't yet include the information, but it's being integrated as a project as we speak.
Are there plans to bring that in? Because, I mean, obviously, this is a pretty, as you pointed out in your presentation, that's pretty critical.
Yeah, the project is in flight. Yeah, I don't have the end date, sorry, it's probably the... Yeah. For sure, thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Deputy Mayor Cashmore.
Yes, sorry, and humble apologies for being late, Chris, but I really enjoyed what I saw, and again, thank you for Watercare's hospitality on Tuesday. It was much appreciated. We all learned a considerable amount. Very simple question. Your business is about pumping water or waste, either directions. What has the biggest whole-of-life carbon footprint? Steel pipes, polyethylene lined steel, or straight polyethylene?
CLS, Cochrane Line Steel Pipe, is our is the biggest individual source contributor from a pipelines perspective. It's a relatively traditional concept and tool that we use, and there's opportunities for reduction both in the concrete, the steel, and the opportunity for alternative pipes.
Thank you. And last, we have Member Wilcox.
Thank you for your presentation. I've just done a quick algorithm here. 780 litres of fuel for your diesel truck creates the same amount of energy as 1 tonne of coal. If you're adding a truck a year to our electricity system, which is now using 1 million tonnes of coal every quarter, how are we reducing our carbon footprint?
Thank you for the question. Regardless of the one truck, whether it's this truck, another truck, or any other truck, the studies that I've seen show that an electric vehicle is more efficient in its transfer of energy, regardless of the energy supply that it's on, and will reduce emissions. So even if you happen to be in Australia with one of these trucks, with the energy supply that they have, the reduction in emissions because of the efficiency of the transfer of energy for the electric engine is more so than the wastage associated with an internal combustion engine, allows it to be more efficient than if it was a diesel engine.
I suppose my question is really, if we're adding a tonne of coal a year, a tonne of coal every 3 months, or we're doing 1 million tonnes now, how is increasing that demand on our electricity consumption going to reduce our climate, our carbon footprint? Because I'm really struggling with this part, because we seem to be transferring from one mode to another mode, but we're actually not doing anything different at the source of the fuel, irrespective of whether electricity is cheaper or not. So I'd like to see that work out, because as we put more load on the electricity system, we actually need not 1 million tonnes of coal every quarter. We'll need 1 million tonnes of coal every month.
I'll decline to comment on New Zealand's energy system, but I will pick up your point, which is really well made, about a hierarchy of reduction, and transitioning from one fuel to the other, such as that example, is not at the top of the hierarchy and isn't the first thing that you should look to achieve. Just like you've suggested, if we can not have any fuel, electricity, diesel, whatever it might be, then that is absolutely the priority. And that goes back to the consideration of, do you build in the first place? How big do you build it? What size do you need, etc., so that we don't need to have as many inputs to achieve that outcome. Ideally, we don't need the truck in the first place, regardless of which fuel it might use.
But a horse still.
Kia ora. Good question, Member Wilcox. I think I have been looking at a similar situation. Largely, the coal use for energy in New Zealand isn't used for the charging of batteries. It's used for energy for industry rather than so. And we, because of the hydro dams issue, we have been increasing coal, but actually now that the dams are full again, we're back to over 80% of renewable energy. So, but like Chris said, that I had a lot of questions about this around electric vehicles, is that, the reduction in emissions from cars outweighs the use, even if you are charging on coal energy, which we aren't in New Zealand anyway. But yeah. Thank you, Chris. Could I have a mover? I think Desley indicated that she wanted to move. I'm happy to second. Thank you very much. I don't know if there's any speaking turns, but yeah, you answered those questions well, but also a huge amount of information. I guess more information the better is always good. So thank you very, very much, and we will see you next time. So thanks, Chris. Any other speaking to the item? No? All those in favour? Aye. Thank you. Right.
Thank
now,
you.
members, we will move to item 9.